Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mission Debrief. My name is Alex.
And I'm Haley.
And we are coming to you from Honor Flight Columbus here in Columbus, Ohio. This season is sponsored by
Specialty Gas House.
And tell us what the Mission Debrief is all about.
We will be debriefing every mission that we take, starting with mission 139. So we are really excited to dive right in.
Yeah, right on. So 139, we are here. We've just come back from Washington, D.C. with an amazing group of veterans, an amazing group of guardians, staff, ground crew. Everybody made it flawless. We had an amazing time. We also got to go during a very special season. So we'll
dive into that when we get there.
Yeah. So let's start. We're at the airport.
Columbus International Airport.
Columbus International Airport. John Glenn. Who we also went and saw. I went and saw his grave.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he's buried at Arlington National Cemetery.
Yeah.
Which is a really neat thing because it's also right near the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is the primary stop that we take there. So veterans can see that. And then I think that's particularly interesting for our veterans who are from Ohio.
Yeah.
Which is really neat.
There's always a group that wants to go, and we'll dive into that as well. But a certain two veterans wanted to go with a very special guardian that went on this flight. And so I took them over there.
Yes, we will get into that. Alex, you're really bad at playing favorites, aren't you? You play favorites.
I do.
Let's start with both of our favorites, Rodney.
Okay.
So this is a new season.
Yeah.
A lot of things are new, but a lot of things stay the same. The core of who we are and why we do what we do is all the same. But when we start off in the morning, a little bit earlier now, everybody's there like 15, 30 minutes earlier. But Rodney, in case you don't remember from our previous episodes, Rodney is kind of, you think of him as your veteran.
Yep.
Rodney's my friend. He's your veteran. So just kidding. You can be friends too. But he is our ground crew leader. So we use that terminology because that's what the airport uses. But primarily, he's the one that is working alongside our wheelchair team lead, which is Eric McWhorter. The two of them are there bright and early. I think they're getting there at 4. Sometimes Rodney gets there earlier. He's insane. And they're setting everything else up. So they're getting all the wheelchairs ready. We're going to take more than 50 wheelchairs per flight. There's a lot of moving pieces. And I'll be honest, while we take care of what we're doing on the flight during the day, Rodney makes the airport possible in the morning and at night. So we'll talk a little bit more about him later. But starts out with Rodney at the airport. We show up by the time my butt rolls out of bed and gets there. Everything's set up. So I just walk into, all of us staff, we walk into a flawless, like you said, flawless setup. And then that's when we start welcoming our volunteers and then eventually our veterans. So I think a couple terminology changes that would be important to mention in the beginning of this episode. We take guardians, who are the ones who have the privilege to spend the day with the veterans, hearing their stories, just facilitating this whole experience. We have mobility support, which are the people who are helping us with wheelchairs, as well as the logistics of the day. They have a very, particular jobs. And then you have staff, and then you have media, which you're media.
That's me.
That's you. So anyways, I think now is as good a time as any to introduce. We had 3. All of our guardians are special on every flight. But 2025 was the beginning where since December, we officially started a new look at our high school guardian program. So these are our program participants have all been trained. They've been with us since December of 24, and they were working really hard. So they interviewed with us. We had over 100 applicants from all over our territory. And these are the ones, the cream of the crop, frankly. And the first flight did not let us down. We had Dax, Jackson.
And the year of Izzy.
Okay, and Izzy. I was so pleased with how this turned out. I think all 3 of them showed us why this program really matters, why spending the time to teach the context of the Vietnam War, talking about how to speak with veterans and how to go about this day is really important. So we'll talk about them as we go, but we got to see them at the airport bright and early. And they all had smiles on their faces, which I was like, wow, teenagers early in the morning. This is impressive. I picked good ones, right?
Right?
Yeah. So anyways, I think one of the things that I thought was really cool, I felt like we kind of got a backstage pass at the airport to our gate. Did you feel that way?
We did. I think it was a little bit more, yeah.
It felt really personalized. So instead of going out of Terminal A,
Possibly, yeah.
Southwest,
Yeah.
we are chartering with 2 different airlines this season. So we got to fly out of Terminal C, which
I didn't know existed.
Most people say Delta. I grew up flying Delta with my dad, so that's how I knew. But there's TSA has the ability to open up a new kind of area if it gets busy. Yeah, wing. That's a good way to say that. And our gate is like straight through there. So they went ahead and they totally are working with us on this. Like this is something we requested and they were able to do. We'll take it flight by flight, but we're grateful as they are able to do it for us when they can. And so that meant our veterans could come right off the elevator, go straight through the TSA line with our specialty screening. Everybody's screened ahead of time. And then we go through and then it was like, boom, let's get on the plane.
Yeah. And like I said, I had never seen that gate before. So when when I was helping veterans go up, so I went up the stairs. I like, all right, everybody get on the elevator. I didn't want to clog it up. The second time I went up, because I went up and down quite a few times to try to help people. And so I went back around. I went up the stairs. I went up there and I'm like, I have no clue where I'm at. At one point, I thought, that's a little side note, I thought I'd like somehow manage to get behind TSA.
Okay. Fundamentally, it would be a whole lot harder to hack TSA on that.
Yeah, I was just like, I did it. I found like a loophole. And then I looked over, I was like, oh, I got to go that way. Like they had completely blocked everything off.
I didn't know.
Yeah, if somebody would have saw me, they're like a little kid found a treasure. I'm like looking around like, I did it. No, I didn't do it. Okay.
Actually, you did it wrong.
Yeah, I did it completely wrong. I was backwards.
Okay, so we got to the gate and we got to take control of the whole situation. They allowed us,
cool.
The charter allowed us to board the way we needed to board. And those kinds of, I mean, I think people take for granted how kind everybody is along the way in honor of this mission of what we're doing. So anyways, we get on the plane, we're doing our thing.
We have breakfast.
We do, and this is cool. Tell us a little bit about breakfast this time.
I have no clue, but I saw one of my favorite logos.
What did you see?
I saw Wendy's.
Did you think you were going to get a single?
Yes, yeah. I thought I was getting a cheeseburger this time.
Sorry, it's a little early
That's
for
okay.
most people to eat a cheeseburger. Wendy's wanted to partner with us in the spring to bring fresh fruit. So that's really awesome. Nothing against fruit cups. Okay, I have a personal vendetta against fruit cups, especially on a plane. I mean, just think about that. We don't have to spell it out. But anyways, so hopefully we can continue that partnership and continue to grow with them because everybody knows that Wendy's has a home here in Ohio. I mean, this is where it started. So that's also cool to kind of...
Did you ever eat the original Wendy's?
Actually...
Oh, tell us the
Nobody
story.
wants to know this, but in 4th grade, we had to choose a famous Ohioan.
Yeah.
I don't know why
I chose
Dave. I chose Dave.
Yep.
So we had friends of my parents like owned a franchise of Wendy's, and so they got me in, and I interviewed Wendy, even though that's not her name. And I got to wear the outfit.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So yeah, I did go to the original Wendy's before it closed down. Anyways, so that was really awesome. And they had representatives, like you said, the logo was there because they had representatives. And what's really neat about this to me is they called our office and said, hey, we want to be a part of this. We don't want to just like throw money at it. We want to be there. Yeah. We want to see what this is going to look like. So that was really cool.
I felt like one of the guys I was joking around with and playing with in that line because I was trying to hand out food as well. And then I was like helping with wheelchairs at one point.
Okay. Flight media is cameras.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay.
And I was all over the place. I was trying to help out.
No, you are helpful.
But I feel like he was a veteran as well.
Yes. I think that might be true.
Yeah. I think he either Iraq, Afghanistan.
Yeah, I saw that.
On. Yeah.
Yeah, which was really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool that they let those guys be involved.
Oh, I mean, we jumped at the chance. We were like, heck yeah, bring your people. Let's do this. So we're excited to see where that could grow.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we got on the plane. I feel like we had another uneventful flight. We don't have to bring up. We have every flight has a flight doctor and 3 EMTs. Our flight doctor this trip was Dr. Kuntz. And sometimes Dr. Kuntz likes to say things that makes you anxious. He wouldn't say this to a vet, maybe he wouldn't say to just anybody, but he's like whispering behind about things you don't whisper behind on a plane. But other than that, it was an uneventful plane ride. We landed in Dulles this time, which was a first for us. And I will again say the charter representative, her name's April. She has been fabulous to work with, and even just answering questions that might feel silly to you and I, but are also really important to know. So that was really helpful. And when we got there, we got to use people movers, which are basically fancy things that take people from
people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You should do their marketing.
I should. We move people from here to here.
There would be better.
Oh yeah, here and there. Yeah.
So anyways, load up the people movers, and essentially because you're a charter, we were out there. We were parked on the tarmac way out there, and the people mover takes you to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've done it once, I think it's going to be
pretty simple.
Yeah, pretty simple. And the airport crew, I mean, they came and they said, okay, how can we do this to make it easier on you guys? Which again speaks to the kindness. Yeah. It's not something you're used to in the airports. So anyways, then our dream team, sometimes I call them the boys, and I think that might be condescending.
So we took the people movers from the tarmac. We got to the main gate, which was kind of neat. Different airport. I saw the flags.
Have you flown into Dulles before?
I have, but never, honor flight, of course.
Yeah.
So we have all these green shirts around that say Honor Flight Network. And then they have flags in the window, and it said with an Honor Flight flag. So it's kind of neat,
They have a large Honor Flight Network has a larger volunteer presence at Dulles.
Yeah. And so when we pulled up, but as soon as you open the doors, we had active service members.
You're right.
Lined up. And they also went with us. And when I say service members, we're not even talking completely, about grunts. A lot of these guys were upper, I think we had a colonel at one point with us. I mean, and they stuck with us the whole day. They were pushing.
They were mobility support for us.
Yeah, they were pushing wheelchairs all day long. They were loading them in the belly of the plane. It was pretty neat to see. So.
And this is going to be terrible to say this, but Eric and Jared, they have rank. They're military guys. I know them as Eric and Jared. So, but their unit came back to Ohio. So those guys, if I have this correct, they're from Ohio.
They're from Ohio,
and they're stationed there right now with the Guard, right?
I was talking to, I don't know, maybe it was a colonel, and he was from McConnellsville.
We're terrible.
I wasn't really sure. I was trying to
We're veteran focused, okay? They're active duty.
Yeah. But he was from McConnellsville. Which I know pretty well. But he said, their unit, they're from all over Ohio. And it was really neat to see.
Well, and they're going to be with us.
Yeah, for every flight.
The rest of the year. So we're really excited about that. I mean,
so we apologize. If you're listening right now, we will get you.
You can correct us.
Yes, next time.
We welcome the constructive criticism. Yeah. So we're at Dulles. We're there for the first time. Actually, also cool to note is we are the first honor flight to fly into Dulles of the year. So that was another reason. People were really excited, like volunteers based out of the DMV area were really excited just to see veterans again because, it's been a long winter.
And we had, do you know who the honor guard was that welcomed us? Not really sure.
Nope. I was just happy to be there.
Yep. Yeah, we had quite a few volunteers. We just had normal folks with signs, coming in to be supported. Yep.
Grateful Americans.
Yep. And we got outside. We saw the dream team.
Yeah, the boys.
Our boys were there.
Yes. So the boys were back.
Yep.
So Caesar, Trey, and Michael. Michael. I was saying Mike before.
It is Michael.
We had dinner with them over the winter, and he had listened to the podcast. So he did, in fact, fix that for us, which was great. We do not want to disrespect them. They're driving the buses.
Yes.
So anyways, it was really, we loaded up. It was smooth. We immediately had to be flexible with our schedule. Our schedule shifted a little bit. So we started out at Iwo Jima. Right? Oh my gosh. Was I there? Yeah, we did. We started out at Iwo Jima.
Yep.
And our Marines were able to get off. We had a few Marines, less than 10, not a ton. And then we
also women Marines.
Yes, which was really cool.
Yeah, really cool to see.
Our service women. We had several service women on this flight, which was really neat. And then we went to Arlington.
Yep. We did.
And I was opening that up that was a segue for you to insert your story you referenced in the beginning.
What story did I? Oh, hey, Mr. Glenn, Senator Glenn, Mr. John Glenn. That being, I took 2 of the fine Vietnam veterans down that way because Izzy Geiger, we don't play favorites, but Izzy.
Alex does.
Izzy is a very special young lady, a high school student out of Grove City, Ohio. Pretty much a junior version of me, just 20 years behind.
Yeah, it was a long day for me, wasn't it?
Yeah. So shout out to Izzy. We love you. Thanks for coming along. She was an incredible,
she was.
Like you said, an incredible.
Our high schoolers rocked it.
Yeah, an incredible example of the kind of students that we take. It couldn't have started out better in the year, even on her spring break.
Yeah, I think most of them were on
spring break.
I think they all 3 were on spring
But
break.
just spend your spring break, stay behind, to kind of do those things. That's pretty cool.
I agree, especially senior year because they were all seniors.
Yeah. So John and Ron,
John and Ron.
So kind of a side story to bring that back and how full circle about how we dedicate ourselves to this program, to the people in the program, not only the veterans. I got to be the adult to meet John and Ron.
Alongside Izzy. So we don't
Izzy.
want our high schoolers meeting their veterans ahead of time without an adult present.
Correct. And so we met at a Roosters in Grove City in my hometown, Izzy's hometown, and got to get to know them and to see them the next morning. It kind of says a lot about when I saw John and Ron for the first time in the airport at John Glenn in the morning. It was a familiar face. And you could tell automatically shoulders kind of drop a little bit.
Yeah.
And so when we got there, I said something about John Glenn. They both perked up. I'm like, come on, let's go down. So to get to show them that, it was kind of neat. They wanted pictures, with John Glenn's grave and all that. So
that is neat. Yeah. That is neat. I think that's one of the things we always say is, you're required to meet your veteran ahead of time unless the veteran lives more than 50 miles outside of this office. But if you can meet, like you said, to offer that sense of ease.
It takes that icebreaker away.
It does.
In the morning, because it takes a while to adjust.
For you as well as for the veteran. It's not even just for the veteran.
Right.
So we left Arlington National Cemetery. We had lunch. You had a sandwich you didn't like as well this time.
Spicy chicken.
Yes.
I love chicken. Spicy chicken was maybe a little too spicy for me.
Well, I hate to tell you this. I think it went over well with the veterans.
Did it?
Yeah, so you might have to order the chicken.
That's fine.
That's fine. It is for them.
It's for the veterans.
It's for the veterans.
Yep.
And then I think I think when we were driving into the city on the way to lunch, so a couple of weeks ago, when I first saw it was going to be peak season for the blooms, the blossoms, cherry blossoms. I texted Caesar and I said, if you don't show me these cherry blossoms, there's a little bit of a threat. And so anyways, we were driving through and afterwards he was like, this one's for you. But it was so cool because where the money shots of the cherry blossoms that people are familiar with are around the Tidal Basin, which is where Thomas Jefferson Memorial is, and that's across the way from the Lincoln Memorial. So we don't ever actually go to that part. Also where the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is. So to be able to drive through them is really something special because you can kind of feel enveloped by them. And they're all over the city. Actually, in my opinion, I think some of the best ones are in Georgetown or the Capitol Hill area away from where all the crowds are. So that was, I think, special for the veterans to get to see that. A lot of them talk about that after the trip, that they end up taking their families and going back just to see the cherry blossoms. Yep. So I think it was special to kind of get to see.
I don't know if we should mention or not, but I don't know if cherries come from cherry blossoms.
Oh.
Okay. Well,
Alex,
so
that's a good question. That's a totally fair question.
Yep.
I don't eat the cherries from cherry blossoms, but maybe they're good. I don't know.
Oh, so they do produce fruit.
All
right. So we passed the cherry blossoms on the buses.
And we didn't eat them.
And we did not eat them. There was a festival going on.
There was a festival. Well, it was about to start. So the festival. So DC was kind of a hop in place. And then plus our bus driver, Michael, was telling us that this is kind of the beginning of field trip season. Okay. So you're seeing a lot of kids and which is always cool for the vets. So at Arlington, there was a large school. And I think there was a big school and then there was also a deaf school there as well. And they all kind of came and created a line for the veterans to walk through after the ceremony of the changing of the guard, which is really neat.
Cool.
This trip, we kind of have some big things to talk about. First and foremost, the longest stop of the day is at the National Mall. And this is where, we've talked about before, you're seeing World War II, you're seeing Korea, you're seeing Vietnam. And the majority of our veterans are Vietnam veterans that we take. This trip was kind of cool because, well, every trip is cool, but this one was unique in that we took not 1, not 2, but 8 Korean War veterans. Ooh. And a World War II veteran. Yeah. So we did 2 flag presentations here because the oldest veteran, who was 99 years old, was not the World War II veteran. So that was really special. And we've also started a new process within the office where we nominate volunteers to kind of have the honor and the privilege of presenting that flag. So we chose Izzy. She was nominated in the office because of who she is, who she's shown herself to be in this program, and the way she represents her community. And then we also chose Joe Nelson, who has been an incredible volunteer, has stepped in for us when we've needed on more than just flights. I mean, he's doing a lot of outreach events and things like that on a consistent basis. And that was really special to get to talk with them ahead of time of the flight so that they could kind of process.
So I feel like that whole protocol of nominating.
I knew this was going to come.
Came after 138 when I got to present.
It did come because of that experience. Because when we
they're
watched,
like, we can't just have any Yahoo off the street.
No. Beth was really
tread lightly.
No, stop. When Beth was really impacted by your reaction and then I think when we came back in the office and all 4 of us staff talked about it, it was like, you know what? This meant so much to you. How much more would it have meant if we had come to you ahead of time and said, Alex, we want you to present.
I was
this
shaken
flag.
Right before too.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's probably the biggest honor, any organization has ever bestowed on me.
It's not to say, I mean, whenever we've asked people to do it in the past, we're not asking yahoos off the street, but I mean, it's now just us making the choice to be more intentional and give you all that opportunity to think about it ahead of time. Especially when you're asking a student. I advocated if we're going to ask a student to do it, let's give them, the best shot to make this meaningful. So that was really special. And then you and I had to hightail it out and get to Korea.
Correct. To do some video of a very special process that we have yet to do. And I don't know a lot about it. I know that operations staff, you ladies that went to DC earlier, then you guys got to speak with them at Summit?
Oh, yeah. So when we had our national summit in February, we had all of the honor flight hubs have the opportunity to go. And there are vendors there, I guess is the best way to say it, vendor fair. But the Korean Consulate, the Korean Embassy was there, and they have an opportunity where they want veterans who were in the Korean War, boots on ground in Korea. They want to present them with the Ambassadors for Peace Medal, and they want to do it at the Korean War Memorial if possible.
South Korea.
Yes. And so essentially, you can apply anytime. Like you as a family member, you can do this even if your loved one has passed, and you can call our office for more information. But they are wanting to partner with Honor Flight so they can physically be there. The consulate can actually be there to hand the medal to the veteran. So we had 2 of our veterans who were eligible for this honor.
And there were 2 individuals. Sorry if I stop you there.
No, it's okay.
There were 2 individuals that came to present. You said a really tall guy. We're supposed to look for a tall guy.
Yeah, well, he called me on the phone and said that.
And I go, okay, well, I know I'm short. You don't got to say he's tall and went over there. I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't even go up to his shoulder.
Yeah, he was a tall
And the other gentleman was military?
Yes, military.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's pretty neat.
So Charles Nye and Raymond Harris were both presented with the Ambassadors for Peace Medal. And I think, I don't know. I don't even know how to even put this into words. When you're there, and we haven't spent a ton of time capturing Korea because the majority of our veterans are Vietnam veterans, but this time we were intentional about being there. And that was something Beth had identified as wanting to be part of this flight. So when we were spending time there, kind of waiting for veterans to arrive, watching the consulate interact with the public, I was kind of, I don't know if you caught this, but I was listening to what they were saying. Every word out of their mouth was advocating for our veterans.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a foreign nation that's here with the only idea of honoring American veterans.
And it's something special if you've never heard it before. The way they were saying, and we'll release some clips, some reels later on if you follow us on socials. But the way I don't know if it was the military gentleman
no, it was the other one.
Said multiple times, thank you for giving me and my people, my country, freedom.
Yes. Yeah,
which
it's
is
powerful.
which is pretty crazy. Normally, you think of Americans thanking American veterans for that, but these people were like, thank you for helping us be free.
Yes.
So.
It was, like you said, I mean, hearing from them in their words, but also, they were there representing their culture and their country. And I think that was I mean, we knew that would be impactful, but to actually see it play out in the eyes of the veterans of both Mr. Nye and Mr. Harris. And what was really special for Mr. Harris is he was actually, I don't know if you caught this, but he was in a group of veterans who they all traveled together, travel buddies, because they're family. One of them was the female veteran well, one of the servicewomen. So they actually got to be there for the ceremony, which I think was really special to actually get to be a part of that together.
The one of the gentlemen from the consulate, he was intentional about like shaking their hands and thanking them.
Yes.
Even if he didn't know that they were Korean war vets.
Right, because she was substantially younger.
Yeah.
She was...
But he was just like,
golf.
he was like, let's take a picture. He's like, no, let's everybody take a picture. He was all about it. So
yeah,
neat.
It was, we were really blown away by that experience, and we're excited to continue
Very
to
patient
offer
with
that.
us.
They were so patient. They kept
trying to round up veterans.
Oh my gosh. And they kept saying, don't rush them. They're totally fine.
Yeah.
You guys take your time.
That's
So
awesome.
we were so grateful and excited to continue taking part of that. And something else that comes to mind, I was talking to Celeste, our director of volunteers, before recording, and we kind of asked her what stood out to her. She made the comment that she felt the veterans were chattier this time. I have to agree, and we saw that at Korea. We got to speak with, not only we spent some time
with Nye. Charles.
And I think it'll be great to release a reel, and we'll tell a little bit more about his story, but we'll maybe sample
If you want to
it.
hear about a golden tooth,
Yes,
and how he got that, and how he lives with his high school class in his mouth the rest of his life.
That was a really weird way to say that.
No, it was a really cool story.
It was
he
great.
kept going, and I'm holding the camera and I'm listening. I'm like, this story gets wilder and wilder.
Yeah.
I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was,
yeah.
and he's like laughing about it, and so we'll share a little bit more about Mr. Nye
and about just talk about that generation of gentlemen as well. Starting out when he's talking, he goes, "I had 4 older brothers." He
made it all about them.
Yeah.
We were I specifically was there asking him about him.
Yeah, asking about his medal, and he said, "Well, I've got 4 older brothers, that were in the service."
One too.
Yeah, and talking about where they were wounded, what they did and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, man, I want to hear about that tooth.
Yeah,
let's hear about that tooth.
But the humility, I think, is kind of what you're getting at, and that's true. And then you transition from that generation, which is kind of this. In between the greatest generation and Vietnam is Korea, the forgotten war, oftentimes, which I think is why we are trying to be more intentional about including their stories, because we're still flying them, and we will fly them until they have all been given their honor flights. Yep. So we were sitting there, and there was a gentleman who was not a Korean War veteran. He was Vietnam, but I thought this was interesting because we were kind of packing up and getting ready to go, and you were like, "Wait a second, there's a story there."
Yeah.
So I stepped aside and was talking to Kelly, one of our she's active duty DC mobility support. She was spending time with that particular group to help with wheelchairs, and just kind of asked her, what's the story here? I wanted a little background before I went in, and just started talking to him. She said, he'll talk to you. Just talk to him. So we started chatting, and he specifically chose to go to Korea to take a minute and process his emotions before he got to the Vietnam Wall.
He was singing, actually.
Yes, so he's Native American.
Yep.
And he wanted to take a moment and sing. It's a special song, original to his culture, about Vietnam veterans. I would have loved to record that, but we felt that would not have been appropriate. We wanted him to have that privacy with that moment. But I mean, wow. I mean, that was really, really something. So we chatted with him a little bit. And what stood out to me was when I went to start asking about his service, he just kind of was rattling off things that he does now. And everything he's done since he got out of the military has been about advocating for other veterans, not himself, advocating for other veterans. And that was just, I think, really telling. Again, like what you were saying about the generation of Mr. Nye, seeing that humility passed on to their sons and their brothers and their friends and their sisters and daughters. And I think that's something that as we continue to debrief and we get into more stories, we're going to see that common thread kind of weave everything together. So anyways, we leave the Korean War Memorial after spending some great time there. I kind of think we're going to have to do that again on the next flight.
Yep.
Just kind of spend some time there. And
it was really interesting too, as I'm sitting here and kind of sat back and thinking about it was, I mean, I was teary eyed after the first one with Harris, getting that because he starts tearing up, I'm just like, okay, well, don't look at him, but I'll film everybody else. Yeah. And not only that, but when these things start to happen, it happens a lot at the Vietnam Wall as well, especially if somebody's holding a picture of someone or getting, a medal or an award, because I would love to have, when I went not too long ago, like I said, with family, I didn't get to see anything like that happen when I was there.
Sure.
But when those medals were being given, people were asking questions. They're like,
"Oh, the general public is what you're talking about?"
Yeah, the general public was kind of gathered around, and afterwards they thank him for his service and everything else. It's pretty neat. It's, I mean, to have that moment of, when I'm somewhere, and I see some sort of Vietnam vet or hat, insignia, whether it be at Walmart or in a parking lot, I always go up and thank them. And normally they're confused. They're like, "What's this kid doing?" Even though I'm not a kid. They're like, "What's this kid want? What's he trying to do? Where's the camera?
Right.
Who's got it on me?" So it was pretty special to see. And then for people, to line up and thank him for his service, I think it really hit him. It made that moment really special.
Especially what you're saying. The Korean War is the forgotten war. Yeah. Like, we don't talk about it. Even on Honor Flight, I think we just kind of have this MO of like, "Oh, we're going to the Vietnam Wall. Oh, it's a welcome home." But the reality is, no, we exist for every generation that served, whether you were in a conflict or not. I mean, you can be a Cold War veteran, gap year. So in speaking specifically of kind of what you're sharing about, this is their experience with the reception they received, whether it was Korea, Vietnam, World War II, is unique to themselves, to their generation, to the society they were living. And it really struck me, again, I was talking to Celeste, and Dax, one of our other high schoolers, had two brothers who were both Vietnam veterans. And Daryl Martin was one of them. And she made a comment about his story that really, really struck me, because I think it captures so many of the perspectives that we encounter, if not literally all of them, on these flights. He was in country, so he was in combat. He was seeing things. And he was kind of just sharing with Dax the reality of war. And he wasn't like down and really depressing about it, though arguably that exists in that experience. He was just making the comment, "I didn't think about it. That was my normal. Yeah. That was where I was. That was my existence." And I think we take for granted now, where we sit in 2025, our generations, where it's kind of like, yeah, I have access to the internet. I have indoor plumbing. I have the freedom to get up and use indoor plumbing whenever I want. I mean, that sounds elementary, but at the end of the day, they didn't. That was not their normal. And they didn't think twice about it. They were there to serve, and they were going to serve. And so I think that's kind of the vein of which we should reflect a little longer as we're interacting with veterans, whether it's on an honor flight or not, like you said, whether it's at a Walmart.
I was actually kind of reflecting a little bit yesterday. I was thinking about some of the pictures, some of the people that we saw, and to be honest, we go. I mean, I've only been on a handful of less than a dozen honor flights, and to think about it, I've helped people look up names. I've helped people do rubbings on the wall. Let them take their picture, with fallen comrades, brothers, sisters, at the wall. And I'm thinking to myself, how many more names are up there? You know what I mean? And every time we go, it's a whole new group of names we have to look up. And it just keeps going and going and going. And you just think to yourself, okay, the wall's proportionally not that big. I mean, it's huge. But if you look at it, you're like, okay, it's
finite.
If I took a jog through Vietnam, through that whole thing, I mean, I could probably make it 40 seconds, maybe a minute. I don't know. There's a horrible way to say that, but I'm a slow jogger.
But to your point, even at a slow jog,
even at a slow jog,
it's not a long jog.
It's not a long jog, but like then you really walk up to the wall and you see how many names are packed into it.
Over 58,000.
Is that not absolutely just a mind-blowing fact?
Yeah.
And every time it's a whole new handful of people, and talk about the handful of people that we'll never talk about on the wall. It's kind of.
Let that one sit for a second.
Yeah. It's, one of the veterans, he said, no, I didn't know this young man. You remember when we walked up to the wall?
He came to look up the youngest.
Who was 14?
15. Yeah.
15 years old. And when we got there, pretty neat because there were pieces of art down below commemorating.
So a school group had left different pieces, and one student had written a poem about this 15-year-old boy. I mean, he was a child at war.
Just leaving, a backpack for a rucksack, and just it literally was a conversational piece about, the fears that kids have today, how to fit in, how to be cool. And this kid, how to fit in, how to survive.
How to live.
Yeah.
How to make it out. Yeah. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I think, you said it. I want to say it again. The handful of names always changes. I mean, I've never known the same name twice. We had one flight where two people were looking at the same name at the same time, which was wild.
Yeah.
But that's not normal. But the handful of names that don't get seen. I don't know if people know this or not, but if you go to an American cemetery abroad, you're the I don't want to say the decent thing to do. The custom is to go into they have like a registration office, and you tell them who you're going to visit because they keep track. And when I first had that experience of doing that, I thought that was kind of odd, maybe a little controlling. Is this a security thing? No, it's because that way, if a loved one were to come and visit or call for the information, they can see somebody came to visit. And I saw this in play one time. I was there with a mentor of mine I've spoken about before. He was there to show his uncle's plot who died in World War II. And when he went to register, the guy says, "Oh, are you meeting family here?" And he says, I have no idea what you're talking about. His niece was there. Had no idea. So it's just kind of this moment where you think about these names that are visited, but there are groups of people who go and visit specifically the names who are not getting visited. And I just think that speaks to the American spirit. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing, right? Like giving kind of honor to those who might feel that they're forgotten. They're not.
Yeah.
It's
pretty deep.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of names.
It is a lot. It's a lot of names.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, and I think for me, and not to, plug our first podcast, but that concept of, okay, we fly 10,000 veterans, but you only get there 1 + 1 + 1, one at a time. And the reality is whenever you see a statistic, especially when you're talking about war or people, each number value represents a person, a life.
Yeah.
So like when you're at World War II, I don't know, I've never found that this was part of the original design, but I've always thought about this. And you see the Freedom Wall, which is all those stars, each one representing, 1,000, I think. However many they represent. That's terrible. I should know that off the top of my head. Servicemen and women who never made it home. And there's a pool of water underneath it. And so you can really see this at night, but you can see it during the day too. In the pool of water, you see the stars reflected. So you're actually seeing double the amount of stars there. And to me, that's always represented the generations of people who don't exist because that generation didn't come home.
Oh.
And it kind of makes you think about, you're sitting at a Thanksgiving table. What chairs would be different?
Yeah.
How many more chairs would be at your table?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I think this is why we spend so much time at Vietnam, at the wall, trying to facilitate these experiences for veterans. And it makes me think of one of the volunteers that we were talking about this morning that Beth, a post that a volunteer had put. We spent a lot of time going through social media after the flights, and I think you had said it would be really cool to share some of these on the podcast, and I totally agree. So one of our volunteers on this flight, who's actually on the blue bus, Lindsay, she had 2 Vietnam veterans, and she wrote this little, I'll just share, it's like a few sentences here. She said, "Each honor flight I've been on has been different, and I always have a mix of excitement and emotion when it's time to head to the wall. This is my first trip when I thought to myself, my group may not make it all the way down the wall. Both Denny and Bill hung back at the entrance for maybe 10 minutes and stood silent. Normally, the veterans are ready to get down there and see it or move past it. Bill came over and stood next to me for a minute. I put my hand on his back and told him whenever you're ready. They spent so much time reflecting and even offering encouraging words to other veterans there." And then she goes on to say that they did, in fact, go through the wall, do the whole thing. But what was really striking to me about that particular post, and Beth kind of brought this to light when we were talking about it this morning, is this volunteer identifying that each veteran processes this differently. Even if to you and I it might look similar, like, oh yeah, some veterans don't go, some veterans go. It's so personal and deeply intimate to every veteran. And her allowing the space and the time for them to make the choices how they want to interact with their memorials and their fallen comrades. I think that's really significant.
Yeah, and I've experienced both. I've walked through with dozens of veterans now, through the actual memorial. I've also spent time, and I wish I could remember every veteran by name. I'm horrible with names to begin with.
But you know their faces.
Yeah, and I remember even sitting at a bench. Never went through the actual memorial, was not in country. And
the veteran you were with?
The veteran I was with. And I asked him, I said, you want to walk down? Have you got a chance to walk down? And he said, no. He was military police here, stateside. Mm. And he said, I have no reason, no right to go down there. And I said, it's about, remembering whatnot. And we had talked through it. And I said, well, let's just sit here. It's a nice day. And that's what he wanted to do. He was offering encouraging words of people walking, to the actual entrance. But he's like,
that was what his honor flight needed to look like for him.
Yep. And everyone's is different.
Everyone's is different. And I think what I'm hoping in some of our new training formats for our guardians and mobility staff this year is that we impart to them the importance of giving that space, whether it be standing back, allowing them to sing this song of healing, across the reflecting pool, to sit on a bench and never go down, to wait at the front, or maybe go straight down, make a beeline for it, whatever they need, allowing that space. And, us being there to support however that needs to look is really important. Because at the end of the day, the logistics don't matter. It doesn't matter how well the people mover works. It doesn't matter if we fly Southwest or Allegiant. What matters is that the veterans are getting their honor flight.
Correct. I like that.
Yeah. So maybe on that note, as we begin to leave that stop one of my favorite things to do is to kind of hang back and be amongst some of the last to leave Vietnam, because I like to watch them walk away, because I don't know, in my head, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what they're walking away with, or maybe what they left behind.
Yeah.
You know?
It's pretty incredible at this time also, on the last note of Vietnam. I know they do, sort of a sweep up of personal items left behind.
Yes.
But this time it was pretty full.
It
And
was.
there were some very big items, that were in place there, which is pretty incredible to see. I sound old when I say this, but I like when the young kids go through, they'll pick up uniforms, they'll pick up patches, they'll pick up paintings and look at them. And it's pretty incredible to see. Hopefully it's instilled in them.
Well, when we were
something
there,
it's instilled in us when we were younger to want to serve.
right.
Yeah.
And when we were there, to your point, when you were talking about the 15-year-old name on the wall that had that poem in relationship to it, I don't know if you picked up, but there's several, and we posted this for Vietnam Veterans Day, March 29th. There's a reel where you can see some of the artwork. I was so impressed. There's a teacher out there somewhere that assigned names on the wall to her students, and they were supposed to create something in memoriam to those names, which I think, to give your kids a personal experience, like one of the best things I ever did, I sat in an American military cemetery. I had my book, like a journal, and I sat by a random name and knew nothing about the name, wrote the name, and created a story. I was a kid when I did this. And it allowed me a moment, even though it was all fiction, it allowed me a moment to reflect on what this person's life was like. And I think giving that opportunity to the youth is imperative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we owe our veterans that. And why we believe so strongly in this high school program that we're rolling out.
That's awesome.
So one thing I think is really important to mention, two things I want to talk about before we close today. The first is the sponsor of this particular flight.
Yep.
And the second is the welcome home. And they kind of go together. So I hope you don't mind if we go ahead and jump there to the welcome home. So a welcome home celebration. First of all, Alex, what does a welcome home celebration mean to you?
A welcome home celebration means to me, audible levels go through the roof after stimulus after a long, quieter flight. And every flight on the way home is a little bit different. I felt like a lot of people were reflecting on this flight. Sometimes it's super loud.
Yeah. It was a quieter flight.
It was a quieter flight. But welcome homes are everything.
Why?
It's where it's where I found Honor Flight a year ago. Was it a year ago?
Yeah, Beth brought up your anniversary.
Yeah, Beth brought up the anniversary that this stranger wanted to be a part of Honor Flight. No, welcome homes are everything, anything and everything that these, especially these Vietnam veterans, deserve, coming home. Before we got to John Glenn as well, something of note and of mention.
Oh, before we got to the airport.
Yeah, before we got to the airport that we left from DC, more people than I've ever seen.
They had a receiving line to see us out, which was really neat.
Yeah, which was really neat. And then I felt like I got really excited actually, because I was there. I was going back and forth the whole time at that receiving line, and these guys are like, I think they thought that was it.
Yeah, they had no idea the welcome home was coming.
And I remember saying, it was either Ron or John, I forget, but I go, you just wait till we get back.
Like a threat.
Yeah, like you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah. Well, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And you captured, again, it's on that Vietnam Veterans Day reel from this last weekend, but there's this flask that we saw on one of the last missions, and there's this line at the bottom that really, really struck me.
Sorry it took so long.
Sorry it took so long. That to me is exactly what the welcome home is.
Yeah.
That simple line.
When I took that video clip, I remember I kind of bawled like a little baby, because somebody had that inscribed.
Right.
And they left it.
For a specific name. I mean, there's more on there.
Yeah.
So this concept of sorry it took so long, and we get to the welcome home. And I have to say again, we just spoke a minute ago about the volunteer guardian, Lindsay, and her veterans, Denny and Bill. She wrote that Facebook post. Something else we learned when she had asked Bill, "Do you have family or friends coming to the airport?" He said, "Oh no, I'm a loner. I don't have friends and family." She took it upon herself to find friends and family to be there with signs with his name on them. That is what Honor Flight is about. That's what the welcome home is. That's what we're always hoping we see. So I think that kind of brings us to the sponsor of the flight. So we typically, we have had Nationwide was Mission 138, Battelle, Abbott, Jenny Reagan, All Life Foundation, just to name a couple. This flight was unique in that it was our in-memory flights. It was sponsored specifically by people who their loved ones passed and they chose in lieu of flowers to send those donations to Honor Flight Columbus. And we had so much of that over the last 2 years that we were able to literally fly a whole plane of veterans to Washington. So what was really special is that, yes, there were veterans who had passed, but there was also volunteers and their spouses. So one of the big ones for me, one of the first volunteers I ever met was Rich Ganderillis and his wife, Karen. And they embody the spirit of Honor Flight, of what we're doing, of service. And she passed, and we miss her greatly. And it was really special to get to connect with her again and her legacy being part of this fight. Rich was on that fight. And then what was cool, a couple of days before we took the flight, I get a call from one of my veterans, Jim Forrest. Love Jim. I mean, immediately, I was having a rough day that day, and he calls me, and then it was like, woo, what a great day. He calls me to tell me his friend, she had received this letter in the mail, and long story short, her husband was one of the veterans who had passed, and they had chosen to donate to Honor Flight Columbus. And so to hear that this veteran who had passed that Jim was calling to tell me about was the veteran that convinced Jim to take his honor flight. And just being able to see that impact full circle in the community, I mean, that's really special. And so when people are making these choices, to donate to Honor Flight in this way, the legacy lives on.
Yeah. Super, super cool.
A great start to the season, I would say.
An amazing start to the season. Season. But it does come full circle. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's for. It's for veterans, and veterans for veterans.
By veterans in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, Alex, are you ready for Mission 140?
Mission 140.
Wishing for a mission.
Wishing for a Mission 140. We are getting closer and closer. How many weeks do we got?
We are 2 weeks.
2 weeks
This
away.
podcast will go out, and it will be 2 weeks from the next flight, April 17th. And we hope to see you at the airport, 8:30 p.m.
Yeah, 8:30 p.m. Sometimes it can be a little later. For those who are listening.
You get here at 8:30 p.m.
Yeah, you get
That's
there.
That's what we're telling you.
You get here at 8:30. We'll get there when we get there. You know what I mean?
And you'll be ready.
And you'll be ready, and we will be happy to see you. Maybe a little sweaty, maybe a little tired, but we will have an amazing day. My name is Alex.
And I'm Haley.
And we thank you for coming to the Mission Debrief, episode number 4, Mission 140. We'll see you soon.
139.